Hey everybody, it's Najee here, and I'm along with my buddy David. He is the founder of WatcherPass.com. David, how's it going?
It's going well. Just watching movies and staying quarantined.
Good. And we have a very special guest. And before we even get into the introduction, just everybody that's been given the tremendous amount of feedback about the review of this film that we're going to be talking about. It's a really, truly a pleasure to have him right now getting ready to talk to us. We got so much to talk about, but I'm like overly excited. But we have a special guy, the writer, the director, the producer of All About Who You Know, who is available, which is available right now on video on demand on all your video purchasing platforms, whatever it may be. Jake Horowitz, how's it going today? Horowitz, excuse me.
Good, thank you. How are you guys?
Hanging in there, like they said. Quarantine life.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. We don't even live in the same country, so we probably would have been doing this over the internet anyway. So not much has changed.
Yeah, it's really a difficult time for everybody. I mean, we really do, thank you still for your time right now. It's still your time regardless of, having extra time or not, but we definitely thank you for that. And the project is just so amazing, and we got so many questions, and we're just really excited to have you right now. And I think the really quick soft question I have for you is, I'm curious about the name change of the title. You went from the shorter who do you know to All About Who You Know. I'm wondering about the change here.
Yeah, so the movie was always called Who You Know. I think I had a title before I had a script or anything. I mean, obviously I knew what it was going to be about, but I always liked that title, and it was Who You Know. It's nice and short, and then our distributor picked it up and suggested that we changed it to All About Who You Know, which I initially really hated because it's a lot of words and it's very confusing. But it is because so many movies come out on VOD, and as you know, when you turn on the TV, you get a ton of content just thrown at you. But All About Who You Know kind of goes to the top because it starts with an A. So I remember at TIFF, I was listening to somebody talking about like alpha stacking, which is what it's called. And they said, you should always start your movie with an A. And I was like, that's stupid. But here we are. So it's called All About Who You Know. And I've sort of come around to it, but I still call it Who You Know.
That makes sense.
Let me ask a quick follow-up. And also, we should preface this by, we're obviously going to be talking about the movie. We have a ton of questions. So this will contain spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, you should see it already. You should go see it. And then
which is weird to say that there's spoilers in a romantic comedy, but I think there's a few twists and turns that can get spoiled.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I'm crazy about spoilers. I avoided all the Avengers trailers up until the final movie, so I wouldn't know anything about it. So
the original title of Avengers was actually Who You Avengers. They changed it. I don't know.
So I was just wondering, with the name change, All About Who You Know is a line in the movie. Was that already in there, or was that something that was?
It was. Thankfully, the line was always, it's all about who you know. But the idea was that this last part would be where you get the winking nod to the title, but it still worked out. So I think awesome. other titles came up when we were thinking, and it was like, should it be called like A Writer's Something or that? They were all pretty bad. So yeah.
So talking about the movie, Cole is a very complex character, played by Dylan Everett. Can you really talk about coming up with a character such as that, and then obviously doubling down with getting the perfect casting to play that character? Because he's truly a unique character. I really haven't seen in a film, and probably never, to be honest.
Yeah, it was. I had always started out. The original intent of the movie was, let's make a romantic comedy with an unlikable lead, and that's not done a lot of the time. So that was really interesting. And then, a lot of the, when we were trying to get it made here in Canada traditionally, which is through government funding and the established systems to make a movie, because it was such a unique idea, a lot of the feedback was like, well, we don't know how we feel about an unlikable character in romantic comedy. And on top of that, you'll never find someone who could play this part well. And so, luckily we found Dylan, who I knew his work. He's been in a lot of stuff, and he's been acting since he was a kid. And he was really we actually cast him 3 days before we started shooting. So,
oh wow,
like all the pieces were in place, and then I was like, well, we'll never get Dylan, but we reached out to him anyway. 3 days before, his agent sent him the script, and he said he got 15 pages in, and then he picked up the phone and called me and said, I'm in, let's do it. And then he showed up 3 days later, knew all of his lines word for word, and he was really amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
You say he's unlikable, but I mean, there were times when I liked him, right? It's tough. Like as Najir said, he's such an interesting character because it goes back and forth between you like him and then you don't. And
he's really self-aware. So at least when he's being an asshole, he knows it. And so you kind of want to root for him to get on the right track, which is, I think, relatable to a lot of people, is that at least you can try to get better and know what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And that, definitely, it makes it even more infuriating when you're like, why are you doing this? You're intentionally doing this.
Yeah. You know what you're doing wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned that he knew his lines, and that kind of leads to a question I had. So there's one scene on a lake where Dylan is drinking a beer, and Michael Burwell starts the boat, and it spills onto him. And it's a very natural scene. And then on the dock, when he gets out, Michael Burwell pushes him in the water to wash it off. Was that all improvised? Because it looked like it could have been, or it could have been, part of the script. I just wasn't sure.
That was when you have a low budget indie rom-com. A lot of this stuff isn't super challenging. I mean, like, you want it all to feel natural, but so the hardest part was actually that, because that involves choreography and stuff. And believe it or not, that counts as a stunt. I sort of grew up near that lake, and so every summer we would go swimming, and it's a really well-known lake, and everyone in the area swims in it. But because we were working with the Actors Union, when they had read the script, because they have to approve it to get everybody on board, they were like, well, there's a scene that involves someone jumping into this lake. We don't know how safe that is. And I'm like, everyone has been swimming in that lake forever. It's very safe. And they're like, we need water safety tests. And it's like, but yeah, so the boat, when he got pushed back in the boat, we had to do that a few times to get that to look right. And then when he got pushed in the water, we only had 2 shots at it, because anything after that is considered too risky. But Dylan was not worried at all, and he just sort of knocked it out of the park and was game to get shoved in the water.
Awesome. And then that kind of leads to another question. This is a movie about a writer, written by you. I imagine you have a lot of personality and personal experience vested in it. So how much did you kind of allow the actors to improvise and build out their characters, and how much of that was just your good writing, I guess, would be?
The way that I like to shoot things and write things, I mean, I was always a writer first before I was a director. So I like to try to get things as natural sounding as possible on the page. And so I always try to get them to read it word for word, and then do a bit of improv once we have the scene locked. So in that case, a lot of everything was almost word for word in the script. And then some of the funny stuff, Dylan or Stevie or whoever improvised, and a few of those lines made it into the movie. And there's really funny. One of my favorite lines is improvised is Dylan's, when he pulls the keychain out of the mac and cheese, which would make no sense if you've not seen it. And he says, I don't know, it's a keychain and a bowl of macaroni. I bet it must be something good. I think it's a trip to Miami or something like that. That was improvised.
That's awesome.
But I think I like to do really naturalistic dialogue with a lot of people cutting each other off and talking really fast. And so that was all word for word in the script. And they just did a really good job of making it feel normal.
That is awesome. Yeah, it felt so organic.
Yeah.
Very sharp and fresh. I think we were both talking about how it feels like a much younger, fresher kind of movie than something that might come out of Hollywood.
Yeah, and that's part of, I think, that's sort of how it skews differently to different audiences. Like we were talking yesterday about how somebody on IMDb had commented like that they got bored of it after 20 minutes, and I think that's just, if I know a lot of older people who had watched it, or I think my parents sent it to their friends or whatever, and they're like, "What are they saying? I don't know what they're talking about." And so yeah, it definitely skews to like a millennial crowd for sure.
And I'll quickly just say, like much I said in my review, I didn't have aspirations in wanting to be a writer or producer or any of that sort. But the way, I mean, all of us were kids at a point. We all had dreams. We all were visionaries to some extent. And I think how he wanted to live out his passion, and we've seen that play forth throughout the entire movie, whether you liked it or not. I think that should resonate with about 99% of us. If you really want to do something, you really want to achieve it, you're going to figure it out, and you're going to do, if it's ethical or not. So, right. that was really the intrigue for me. It's like, and to the IMDb comments, like 20 minutes in, I mean, like, how bad was your childhood that you didn't feel complacent, say like, I need to see how this is going to play out. You know what I mean? I was in within 10 minutes, like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is different, so.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, for sure, it's like because in the end, like you said in your review, every character has some kind of scheme or plan, and they're all scheming throughout the whole movie, but they're all trying to achieve something. And so I think that's universally relatable, is trying to follow your dreams, and however that works out for you. Whether it's a happy ending or not, it's something that everyone can relate to.
Yeah. Well, and how could you get through that knife scene at the very beginning and not be intrigued? Like, I saw that, I was like, that's such a smart way to kind of open up people's personality and how his process is.
Yeah, I think luckily I've never pulled a knife on somebody that I admire to try to.
But, pursued your dreams well enough, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Don't try that at home.
Yes, disclaimer. Don't try. You follow with your next question, David.
Okay, and then so I guess going back to the, you mentioned that the lake is a well-known lake. I was intrigued, and this might just because Najir and I are both in America. Like, the shoe tree, is that something that, I assume it's something that's well known, but is it something that's like has popular appeal, or was it something that was created for the movie?
Yeah, so like I said, I used to sort of go up summer and spend summers around there, and so I would always see that driving up, and didn't know what it meant, and never sort of stopped at it. Just always looked at it out the window, and it's really interesting because there's like thousands of. I mean, in real life, it's even more than it is in the movie. There's thousands of shoes on this thing, and apparently. So that was the only one that I knew from my childhood, but apparently they're all over the place in Canada and in Ontario. And it's like a tradition that if you're sort of going up north, up camping or whatever, you would toss your shoes on this tree as like a sign of that you were heading up that way or coming back or something. And then a lot of the trees have been knocked down in recent years by the municipalities that they're in. This one is sort of still surviving. And so that was something that I had written into it because it was something that resonated with me, that I thought was this really interesting spot these characters could connect to. And so, we were lucky enough that we were able to shut the road down and actually film there at that tree, which was very hard because we're on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. And then so like, the sun went down and we had missed a few lines of dialogue. So then we had to recreate that elsewhere. Luckily, there was a huge branch that had fallen off the tree that had like hundreds of shoes on it. So we took that. I think there's a behind the scenes photo where we took that branch, put it on 2 C stands, and just like filmed through the shoes. So that's like the spirit of indie filmmaking, is taking a branch of shoes and recreating it. Yeah.
I hope now we're painting another beautiful canvas of legitimately the hard work it takes to get these films done. And that's what I said. It's what I like about independent films, is because we understand, and we'll talk about it in a quick second. Well, we understand the sacrifices that have to be made, really the things that really depend on the success of films, and how the world can obviously put a wrench in that. And the biggest thing for me is I feel that the cast, as well as the directors, writers, and everybody, it's more of an intimate relationship, so that it's a happy medium that comes out of it. Not the big corporate overhead saying like, hey, I need this to be a certain way. And then you end up getting results of people getting in positions that, completely restricts them of something that got them to even this platform in the first place. So, much like I was saying about your cast, we seen them on Degrassi, and you saw a side of them there, and then you see them in a film like this, and you're like, whoa, they're completely versatile to you. Like they were able to really show their skills on display. And I think, that's really passionate. It shows the level of passion on all circles. And, hearing stories about actually getting the film to get done, it's just the other layer that, we don't get to see. But, I appreciate it. Now, hopefully anybody that's watching this and anybody that loves independent films will also take an extra step to say they appreciate that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's so hard to get a movie made. So anytime that anyone says they enjoyed it a little bit is like really worthwhile, especially in a world like this where we didn't get to see it with an audience and stuff.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Michael Blow, I don't know if you're a gamer, but Michael Blow has a line where he says, mainstream games hit kind of all the edges and kind of sand them down, so you get rid of all the rough edges. And your comment about the Canadian Film Board not thinking that the likable character would happen, and some of these these complexities when you were shooting are kind of endemic of indie film. It's like you get to see something that's a little more raw, but then also maybe a little more personal in that respect.
Oh, absolutely. David, your question about the ending of the movie too. This is a really good. Yeah. Okay. I'm interested in this one.
Obviously, major spoilers here, everyone. So I both loved and hated your ending because
that's intended.
It felt like the correct ending, right? It felt like a good open-ended ending so that we don't know what it was, and it felt very unconventional. But me personally, I wanted to know what was going to happen with him. So, can you talk a little bit about that? And
I'm just curious if you guys agree on that love-hate or.
Yeah, we was chatting about this before, and I was just like, we're victim of the era of binging. And, when you love that episode so much that the next one is queuing up next, and then, you forget that you're watching a film, you're just like, all right, well, I can't wait to see what happens to Code next. Like, oh, wait, that was a film. I am very upset right now. So it's not the conventional love hate, but you get what we're saying.
Yeah. I thought it was a perfect ending, but me just as a completionist, and I wanted to have some closure there. So.
Yeah.
I forget your question though. Sorry, what?
So was the ending always supposed to be that open-ended where you kind of don't know what happens to him, and he's got kind of three conflicting?
Yes. Yeah. In the original script, which I want to point out was, the first draft script was like 100. It's embarrassing, but it was like 160 pages or something insane that it didn't need to be, because the final script was like 90 pages. But always the ending was unchanged, and the last line in the script is Cole shifts like imperceptibly in his chair, just like the slightest fraction to show that he is getting up, but you don't know where to.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful because, since the movie's come out, we've had a lot of people message us on social media, and they said, where did he go? But then other people are saying, here's where I think he went to do this. I think he went to do this. And then this goes, so you can sort of draw your own conclusion of, do you want him to learn a lesson? Do you want him to go to Austin or Haley or whatever? This goes back to the thing about older people not necessarily understanding the film. It was, I showed it to my grandmother like a year ago. And I think she was asleep for most of it, but she sleeps through every film. But then at the end, she saw the ending, and I was like, so what happened? Where do you think he went? And she's like, I think he probably just went up to like go to the bathroom. So you can believe whatever you want.
I guess there's more choices then.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the possibility. I just felt, I just felt so entitled that I knew the next episode was coming.
Well, if enough people watch it, well, I can make a sequel and then answer that question.
That's all you had to say.
Yeah.
So to my question to kind of follow about that, because obviously with some people predicting obviously where he went, I think this film encompassed a really important theme. And much like I said again in the review, the theme is very synonymous with the legendary Joni Mitchell's The Circle Game. And it's played, it's referenced, it's pretty much synonymous with the film throughout the entire film. And there's a particular lyrics in the film that I wanted to bring up on, and it's the lyric states, "Through his dreams has lost some grandeur coming true. There'll be new dreams, maybe better dreams, and plenty."
Yeah.
So when I think about the last scene now, when you put that again, it's like, again, somebody who's been self-aware the entire time. I think that, her singing on stage was like him looking in the mirror and realizing like, hey, you're back to where you started initially. Yeah. So, but more or less, the question is the song, The Circle Game. Is there any relation or correlation with you to that song or you to Joni Mitchell? Like, where's the influence there? Because again, I mean, the song is legendary. It's been out for a while, but it's almost as if that song was written for this movie.
Yeah, thank you. That means a lot because I always loved that song. And I've been listening to it since I was like a teenager with my iPod, thinking it was like the most deepest thing ever written, as you do. And I had always wanted to like write something about it and about those themes, which really resonated with me. So always the intention from writing this script was to use that song in some way. And I think perhaps naively, I was like, yeah, and then we'll just get the song and it'll be fine. And so I wrote it in and we filmed it, and there was really no way to separate the song from the movie. And then when it came time to license the song, which of course I've heard the song in other things, and it's not like it's who's a famous band for not AC/DC. There's bands that don't let people license their music. Joni Mitchell is not one of those people. So but we're a tiny little movie, and so we sent in our thing and we said, here's what we want. We want to license the song, and they said no.
Wow.
And so at that point, I was like, well, this whole movie is fucked. Like you can't separate the song from the movie.
Yeah.
So that was like a few weeks where I like did not know what was going to happen, and then I ended up writing like a heartfelt email to Joni Mitchell, obviously not to her because I have no way of reaching her, but to her management, and who knows if she read it, probably not. But in the end, I think we worked out something, and not like for cheap or anything, but we were able to use it in the end, which I'm super thankful for, because I really love it. And I know that from a producing standpoint, my producer, Jane Lohman, who will be watching this interview after, she was like, not for that much money, we're not using it. So I'm happy that it's in there, and that people can appreciate it in terms of how it relates to the themes, because I think it's really important.
So I've got a question to bounce off of that. So the movie's obviously about writer and writing in the film industry, but then you also have this interesting character, Haley, who's an aspiring musician, and you get a lot of her original songs in there. Was it always kind of your intention to have almost dueling artists, or dueling, I guess, struggling artists, even though they're in very different situations? Or
yeah, I think as someone who has wanted to make films since I was a kid, that creative struggle is sort of all that I knew, especially as a young writer. And I wrote this years ago when I was younger, and that's sort of the only inspiration you have to draw on, because you don't have much life experience or anything. So that was really important, that creative struggle and a story about aspiring artists. And initially I didn't even want it to be about a screenwriter, because that's considered really like inside. And a lot of people are like, well, you shouldn't make a movie about making movies. So I was trying to think of other things that he could be, a stand-up comedian or an author or whatever. But in the end, I chose a screenwriter and a musician, because at least a musician, you can see them actually doing something. You don't see a lot of Cole sitting and writing on a computer, because that would be very boring.
Yeah, yeah.
He's in a Starbucks for 8 hours, you know. Just,
It looks a lot like sitting in quarantine, actually. It's months and months of talking to nobody at your computer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So as I come up on one of my final questions, you know, we bounce back and forth about this a lot, and it's film festivals. You know, both of us as reviewers, we look forward to these things throughout the year, because you come up on gems like this, and you know, we're excited for it. And you know, once the world kind of, you know, went to shit, in other words, it's for us, we just kind of wipe our hands like, hey, you know, there's next year. Mm-hmm. But then, you know, again, much I said, like I said earlier, then there's the other half of this that, you know, sometimes we just tend to forget. And that's how independent films are looking for these film festivals, because this is your chance to not only be able to get the world to see it, see the crowd reactions, be a fan, you know, and meet people and other things, meet your mentors or whoever it may be. Yeah. So I just, you know, I think what I kind of want to open up the platform for you to say is just like, you know, as somebody in your role, how important are film festivals into the success of films for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, this movie was actually made, it was finished over a year ago. But then, you know, we weren't going to release it because no one would have known about it until it went and won some awards at film festivals, hopefully, and got around like that, which was, you know, we got into some really good film festivals. We were going to have our US premiere at CineQuest and Cleveland International Film Festival and Canadian Film Fest. They all got canceled. Before we did have a premiere at Hamilton Film Festival in Canada, which was really nice. But we held off on releasing it for a year because we were waiting to go to all these festivals. So we waited for a year, and then the 2 days before CineQuest, it was canceled and all this stuff. So you kind of, you know, we worked on it for 2 years, and the end goal is to be able to enjoy it with audiences and hear what people thought, and we never got to do that. So anytime that people like you post reviews and say how much it means to them, or if a fan messages us on Facebook, it really means a lot, because I have no idea what people think of it. If it wasn't for social media, I would never know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there an avenue, like, once film festivals start back up, could this come back into the circuit or have some sort of additional release? I just don't know how that area
it depends what festivals want to do, because usually they have a pretty hard rule of, if you're already out on VOD or whatever, you can't be at the film festival. So it depends if they start changing those rules. I don't know. It would be really nice to see it on the big screen with an audience, but who knows how far away that is and how long the movie will have been out by then. I filmed my next feature in February, like a week before everything went to shit. So luckily we finished that and filmed it, and I'm in post on it now. But I say that's the same thing where, you know, it's like a Christmas movie. It's like a satire of those cheesy Hallmark Christmas movies. But we don't know. We wanted to see it in theaters by Christmas, and who knows what'll happen. So
what's the theme with your projects, Jake?
Yeah, a satire or a new take on a existing genre that's not looked favorably on. Yeah, I like doing new takes on stuff that people are sort of used to seeing everything.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ed.
So I guess to lighten it. I mean, obviously we think everyone should see this movie, but Najir and I both loved it. You know, and it's available on demand. So I guess in that respect, it's kind of easier for everyone to see it rather than having to go to a theater and wait for the release.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, hopefully more people will see it. It'll get some buzz, and, you know, I'm not sure Well, I hope there's a sequel because I kind of want to know what happens. But
We need your help, people. We need your help.
I also love it as a self-contained work.
I think the sequel title was going to be Who You Knew, and it was going to look back at them like, one idea that I had was like, you start 10 years later and you see, what happened, and they sort of, I think Cole and Michael were going to run into each other somewhere in the industry and be like, oh yeah, we're going to remember. So it would be cool to do.
It would have to be like, and Who You Knew or something.
Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah. How about Who You Knew?
We learned something today.
My next movie is called Cup of Cheer, which I thought, okay, it starts with a C, fine.
Yeah.
But I think it might have to be called A Cup of Cheer.
And you beat me to it. I was just about to say, you mentioned about you being in the middle and in the process of editing Cup of Cheer. Is there any bit of light you can share about that project? And I know the timelines are so crazy right now, so we can't really talk about release, but any bit of news you may be able to share about that?
Yeah, so it's, I remember in your review you said how Who You Know is considered a comedy, but it's sort of more of a drama, which I really love. That's like the artistic auteur side of me, trying to do like a comedy drama mix that I really like. But Cup of Cheer is like straight up comedy. It's like just sort of one of those laugh out loud, like like Airplane or Walk Hard or those kind of really funny movies that have like 6 jokes a minute that you don't see a lot anymore. That was what we wanted to do, and it just completely makes fun of every single Hallmark Christmas movie, which are all the same. And that is almost done editing, and it will be out in November for sure.
All right.
Awesome.
I have quickly got to say that I don't know if you can tell by how big I'm smiling, but you done hit it right here. Because I don't know if you can see right behind me, but there's a person who really loves those type of films right here.
Yeah. What are your favorites? I can't see them.
Hot Shots, both Hot Shots, Airplane, Naked Gun.
Naked Gun, yeah.
That is my cup of tea right there. So that is exciting.
It's a cup of cheer, yeah.
Yeah, there are some of my favorite movies, and they don't really make them anymore. I don't know why.
Not at all. Oh, I'm happy about that.
So I guess circling back to the movie, and this might be one of the last questions. The movie's about Cole and kind of doing something crazy to try to get a leg up in Hollywood. And this could be for you, hypothetical person that you might know. Like, what's the craziest thing that you've done to try to make it in showbiz, or the craziest thing that you've heard? I think that there's probably a ton of very interesting stories that, like you said, probably don't get told much.
Yeah. Never dated anyone to try to get in there. Never stabbed anyone. I think it's pretty. I'm trying to think if I heard any stories. No. I'll say one story that's. I don't. Okay.
You can't anonymize it.
It's about me. My favorite show growing up was Arrested Development, which was hugely influential on my sense of humor and everything. And so one of my all-time heroes was Mitch Horowitz, who's the writer and creator of that show. And so when I was getting started in the industry 10 years ago or whatever, I had won this award at this, it's called the Banff Media Festival. And I won like the Young Screenwriter Award or whatever. And so it's this festival that's like a few days up in the mountains in Canada, in the Rocky Mountains. And everyone stays at this old like castle in the mountains, and there's a festival. And so he was like the keynote speaker of that year, and he was one of my like all-time heroes. So I was really excited to meet him, and I sent him an email beforehand, and we met up, and we got to hang out for a few days, and it was really cool. And they say don't meet your heroes, but he was a really, really nice guy. And that's it. I don't think I did anything crazy. But then afterwards, I had read this article about somebody who wanted to like stick in the mind of somebody that they liked, and so they, instead of sending a writing sample, they sent like a video or something that they made. So I thought, okay, you know, I consider myself a filmmaker. I can send something kind of funny. So I sent him, like, instead of a follow-up reply saying like, hey, thanks, it was fun to hang out, I made like a, you know, this 5-minute video that I threw together in a day that was like just this funny little video that served instead of like an email. It had like a bunch of like callbacks to things we had talked about and stuff. And I made it like a day after meeting him, and I sent it to him quickly. But he's obviously a busy guy, and so he never got around to watching it. And then like a year passed, and then 2 years passed, and then I ran into him at another festival in Miami, and I was like, "Hey, did you ever see that video?" And he's like, "No, so I'll watch it." And so he watched it, and like then a few hours later. So keep in mind now it's 2 years later. This is an email that had like a bunch of inside jokes that would have been funny like immediately after, and now just seemed deranged. So he's watching, yeah. So he's watching this video 2 years later, being like, "Fuck, this guy's obsessed with me. I don't know what to do." And meanwhile, it's just like a funny thing that I threw together at the time. And so he sent me an email after watching it, and he's like, "Well, I'm kind of scared, but like, you know, I'm not like, I can't help you with your career or anything, but like, good luck, and don't like stalk me or anything." And then it's funny that I ended up making this movie about someone who stalked their idol. So I'm worried if he ever sees it, he'll be like, "Fuck, that's gonna happen to me."
Yeah. That is hilarious. Well, really quickly, people, again, you know, All About Who You Know is on all your video on demand platforms for purchase right now. Definitely want to check that out. It's an amazing film. You know, it has absolutely been a pleasure to talk with you, Jake. You know, really getting into your mind about this and hearing about the creative process. This has definitely been a pleasure. I am already looking forward to November. And then I'm just going to just make my own date. And I'm going to say I'm looking forward to next June for part 2 of this.
And you still know people.
Let's do a Kickstarter.
Yeah. But again, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Let me just plug at Cup of Cheer movie or something, I think, is where you can follow us for that movie. And then at Who You Know movie, if you can see all the updates for Who You Know at Cup of Cheer.
Right on. I will have all that information in the description below. People, check it out. And until the next time we get to chat about that, and hopefully the world gets back to normal, we can meet at the film festival the more exciting way with the fans. And much success to you, man.
And then we'll send you a follow-up video about all the inside jokes, and it'll come.
Please do. I'm waiting for someone to stalk me and send me a crazy video.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. Yeah, you have a good one.
Thanks, you too.